How's it going? I'm Preston Thomas. I'm the principal at Life Academy. I know Mia was holding a meeting with some of the principals. I wasn't sure where I was supposed to go, and I ended up over here, so it's all good. I think we were talking about the same thing. Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, I just, I've been trying to think about, I was just sitting there, what this means for my school community, and there was something that was really strong for me and probably grounded me in this work for a lifetime. Was when I came into Oakland and the small schools movement got going, the gross inequities that were happening around salaries in Oakland, where there was this chart, and I really remember it really clearly, where it was talking about the average spent per kid up in the hills versus the flatlands. And I was down at Fremont High School in the flatlands, and I was feeling the inequities every day. And so I think what my concern or question or kind of like thinking is like, there's going to be winners and losers in this scenario around staffing allocations in different locations within the district. And I think what often when I hear this issue come up, and it's been coming up for like the last 5 years, I was on the RBB task force, is the narrative tends to be driven by anecdotes as to actual real data as to where the staffing positions are going to change. And I think my big concern is unwinding school sites, and particularly like middle schools and high schools that have really complicated master schedules by two positions, is incredibly devastating to those school communities. And so like I kind of sit back and I'm totally down with like, let's explore the numbers, let's see what it does, because we really want our kids that are on the bottom side of that opportunity gap to have the most resources leveraged towards supporting their reaching college attainment and graduating from high school. But my concern is that we're not going to do it in like a really broad, like, let's look at all the schools that are impacted and kind of talk about what that's going to mean, because I would really find it, one of the things that I found about the site-based budgeting is that it allows creativity around principals and leaders to really start seeing connections that central office can't see. Pooling different resources together to support kids in ways like after school funding with different buckets. And I would really be fearful of losing that ability as a site leader. And so I was going to give this feedback to Mia, but might as well do it here as well. So I don't know, does that follow? I mean, that's kind of where I sit right now. I don't know. It sounds like there's going to be a process.
So let's take that concretely. And of course, we haven't done the research, right? We want to move beyond anecdotes and see what kind of impact this assumption 6 would have.
Right.
Is your sense that if we did number 6, that your hypothesis is that it would result in less financial resources to, say, your school or to high schools in general? Or?
I mean, my gut tells me yes. I mean, I think when, as one of the on the OUSD side of bargaining with OEA, one of the central issues that the board directed us to negotiate around was really around the issue of like teacher retention. And when you start looking at some of the statistics around where teachers are being retained, I think that clearly where you have high levels of teacher turnover are the areas where you have the lowest salaries that are left in those schools. And so if the resource shifts away from those communities, and I think there's lots of ways to solve that issue. I mean, they're connected. I mean, all these things are interconnected. It just starts to get a little challenging, because where you have turnover, you need more resources, you need more intellectual capital, teaching resources in those school communities. And what is very rare is that you find people that are in very low need school communities that are like, hey, I'm the one, I'm going to move down, I'm going down. That doesn't, I'm going to go down to a school that's really struggling. I can cite a few anecdotes of people that I really respect as leaders that have done that and as teachers that have done that, but in general, I don't think that's the rule.
Not many, right?
Yeah. And that's what my concern would be, is that, I know that we have a pretty strong tradition at our school of teachers stay for about 5 to 7, 8 years, somewhere in there. Then they go off to grad school, and then they are like Cliff Lee, who is one of the founding teachers at our school, is now over at St. Mary's and working to kind of like do urban teacher education program. What's that? Fred is off at UCLA right now. And so and I feel like these people are really going to shift policy. And so I just don't know what it's going to mean on an individual site. And I think school communities kind of need the opportunity to kind of like talk about what that impact's going to mean to them, because it does make me really hesitant around like what that shift would mean. I do agree. I mean, what Vernon was talking about in terms of like the custodial buildings and grounds and some of this school, like there are some things that I think can be centralized to make it a little bit easier. I mean, 38 pages of budget documents that get I mean, if you can remove a couple of those pages, that's great. But I think like, I just wonder what it's going to end up looking like. And I want to know what it's going to look like for my school community and other school communities like that.
Right. Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any
other
questions for? No. Okay.
Okay.
You want to